Hey everyone, this is Derrick Broze with the Conscious Resistance Network. And today we are going to talk about music that can inspire, can empower, can uplift, and specifically music from the artist Dub FX, who I've been following since 2011, I think pretty early in my awakening journey, if you will. And I actually had the chance to connect with him more than a decade ago back in New York City when he came to the US. And his music, I honestly have felt for a long time, is the soundtrack to the movement that I'm a part of, that I'm trying to build, whether that's the conscious resistance or the people's reset, the movement of people who understand the problems in the world, but more importantly, are focused on solutions. How can we actually improve the world? Not just complain about it, not just, be black pilled, as some people say, and assume that everything's screwed, but actually look at our own lives, look at our own hearts and our own minds and our own communities and see what we can do for ourselves. And when I listen to his music and I listen to the lyrics, I feel inspired, I feel empowered, and I'm so excited because we're going to be bringing him to the People's Reset in Bath, UK next month, September 27th to the 29th. He'll be performing at the People's Reset concert. I'm also lucky enough to be opening up for that show, and I'm super excited to talk to him today. Thank you for joining me today, Benjamin. Ben, how you doing?
Good, very good. How are you, man?
I'm doing great, brother. It's good to reconnect with you. And as I said, I've been following you since we had our brief conversation in New York City. And I want to talk to you about so much today, but let's start maybe at the beginning for those who haven't had the blessing of getting to know you and your music. Could you tell us a little bit about your journey into where you are now? I mean, I know you spent so much time on the road busking and really being a street performer, and then that evolving to being in the clubs and the festivals and things like that. Could you tell us a little bit about that journey?
Sure. I mean, I'll condense it down for you if you like. There's a long version and there's an even longer version. But I started off as a musician from the age of 17. I was playing in lots of different bands. I was in a reggae band, a hip hop band. I was in a heavy metal band. I was singing alongside DJs in clubs over like breaks and house music. I was doing acoustic gigs by myself. And from the age of 17 to like 23, I was just immersed in as much music as I could. There was jazz musicians I used to jam with a lot as well. They really influenced me. And I kind of felt like I really wanted to take it to the next level, but I didn't feel like anything was happening or gonna happen for me in Australia. So I decided to go traveling around Europe. And my dream was always to be a street performer because I used to love watching street musicians when I was a kid and circus acts, circle acts and things like that. And so I came to Europe, bought a van and started street performing. And while I was street performing, I kind of developed this style, which people know me for now, which is like the live looping and the beatboxing. Before that, that was just something I did for my friends messing around, So I bought this loop station because I saw this other guy using it. And I had an effects pedal that my vocals would run through. And that was the thing that sort of made me stand apart when I was in all those different bands. My vocals going through an effects pedal, throwing reverbs and delays and pitch shifting and all that sort of stuff. So when I saw this guy using a loop station, I was like, wow, if I connect those two things together, I could probably come up with something pretty original. So I started street performing with those two pedals, and I didn't know what I was doing yet. But as I sort of performed to random passerbyers, I started realizing what would make people stop, what would make their jaws drop, what would make them want to buy my CD, what would make them, want to talk about it. And so I figured out pretty quickly that, doing that, literally making their jaws drop with all these different elements that I was bringing in and out of my show by beatboxing, looping it, making a bass line with a synth pedal that was inside the effects pedal, looping that, singing harmonies over the top, and then singing and rapping, and then all those elements would make people go, oh wow, this is different, this is new. And then on top of that, I also realized that singing about conscious stuff seemed to make people even more excited as well, because you learn really quickly what works and what doesn't work on the street, because people either just keep walking or they buy your CD. And so when I had a few songs that had like conscious kind of lyrics to them, and whenever I sang those songs, people would buy my CD more. So I really started focusing more on that. And, fast forward maybe 5 years, I was became really good at selling my CD and singing these songs, and I developed the sound. And people filmed me, put it on YouTube. There was this one particular guy, Ben Dowden, in Bristol. So I started in 2006. 2008 is when I met him. And 2009, we put out these videos on YouTube late 2008, early 2009, and they just went viral. They just exploded on the internet. I had the most liked video on YouTube at one point, on his channel. And because of that, and because of I was getting millions and millions of views, people started booking all over the world. And since then, I've traveled all over Europe, all over America, all over the world, essentially. Played massive festivals like Coachella, Glastonbury, Boomtown, you name it. I've been everywhere. And so that was 2009 when that sort of came out, and I'm still going, still making music, and that's it. That's the condensed version.
Yeah, it's been a beautiful journey to watch from afar. Was one of those first songs, Love Me or Not, that went viral? The street performance?
Love Someone. So
yeah, Love Someone, yeah.
Another one. I don't actually have a live video of Love Me or Not, which is, I keep thinking I should do it, but I keep forgetting to do it. But yeah, it was Love Someone and Flow were the two big ones.
I definitely remember finding those in the 2010s and coming across that. I think that was the first time I started discovering your music. And like I was saying before, that was, for me, it was a time where I was just starting to question the world around me, and the music and the things you were seeing, like I said, were really inspirational and uplifting in a way that didn't feel fake, but felt authentic. Like, okay, this guy seems to get what's going on in the world, or at least, has his own questions about the state of the planet and where we're headed. And I feel like that message has only become more prominent. And you've released half a dozen albums now since then, and the most recent being Infinite Reflection, which I was playing it on my podcast last week, trying to get people to be more aware of it. I want to talk about that for a moment. Like, how do you think your music has evolved from back then to Infinite Reflection? Obviously, it seems like there's more, you're more in the studio production as opposed to being on the street and doing the live looping and things of that sort. But yeah, what other ways do you think it's evolved, like lyrically, sonically, etc.?
It's an interesting one. It's hard for me to sort of know, because I've just been on this journey from the get-go. It's like I've got two kids and I've been watching them grow. And when I see photos of them 5 years ago, I'm like, oh, that doesn't even look like the same. Like, your brain doesn't quite compute. So for me, it's happened moment by moment. I can't really actually truly answer that question. But if I was to try and answer that, I would say that obviously I would feel like I've gotten better at doing what I do. But generally speaking, like the overall message of my music has never really changed. Like, everything in my music comes from a very similar place. Every song essentially comes from like the point of the starting point of every song of mine is essentially comes from self-empowerment. Like, I want all my songs to have that message, that to empower oneself. So if it's a breakup song like Love Me or Not, that song, it's a breakup song, but it's about how are you going to move on from this? What are the things, like, how do I, get over it, as opposed to just being in the depressed state, which a lot of songs tend to be. A lot of songwriting tends to just focus on one thing and just being in that one space, whether it's just being angry or being negative. For me, if I'm going to do a song about being angry or being negative or being depressed, I want to, there needs to be an arc where it comes out the other side. And now I see, how to move on from that and develop and evolve, essentially. So in that regard, nothing's changed. I'm always singing about that. I've just gotten better at recording, gotten better at singing, and better at writing songs, I guess, over time.
Yeah. Do you think that like you mentioned, your daughters being born, your children coming into the world, has that influenced the way that you approach things? Obviously, you were already kind of putting out a positive message, trying to inspire people, and maybe push people to create a better world in whatever way they can. Do you feel even more motivated to do that with your lyrics and with your music after having kids?
I mean, yes, but not really. Like, my kids obviously have had a huge impact on my life for so many different reasons. I think my wife has had a much bigger impact on me artistically than my kids. My kids are, I've kind of always wanted to have kids. It's not like, it wasn't like even though it was a new experience, I kind of had gone through it in my mind many times. Like, I wanted to have kids since I was a kid. So having kids, I guess it's motivated me to there's a lot of stuff probably that I don't do so much anymore. Like, I don't smoke as much weed as I used to, or I don't just hang with people as much as I used to. I want to spend as much time as I can with my kids in my off when I'm not producing or touring. But no, I mean, I think artistically speaking, my wife has been a bigger inspiration because she's an amazing artist in herself, and she's a really good poet, and so hearing the way she writes has inspired me to sort of develop my art further personally. And we work together. She writes music, and every time we write songs together, I'm like, wow, this is awesome. You know what I mean? So.
Yeah, I love seeing you guys do music together. I think that's inspiring. And let's talk about Infinite Reflection. I mean, this to me is, I mean, I think it's one of the best works you've done. I love each of them individually for different reasons and the different kind of styles that you explore within there. You know, the first song right off the bat, Cracks in the Mirror, you say something like, you know, you're never going to trust the media or the government. And that is something, that message alone is something that will resonate very deeply with my audience and with the people who are coming to the People's Reset to see you next month. You know, let's explore that from why do you feel like that's something that we should probably each have, like skepticism towards government, skepticism towards media? Are there any things particularly like maybe the last few years that have made you feel that way? Or is it just something you grew up kind of like, for example, when we talked in 2013, you said something to the effect that you kind of already had a questioning nature, always had this rebellious spirit. You had the anarchy necklace at the time. Is that something that's just continued to evolve in you as you've gotten older? Or is this based more on like looking at the world and, you know, just the way governments are?
I mean, all of the above, to be honest. You know, I wondered whether it'd be something that I'd grow out of. You know, I think my dad thinks it's something that I'd grow out of eventually. Like, but no, like as the older I get, the more I feel justified in thinking the way I think. You know what I mean? Especially when you look at the way, you know, the pandemic was dealt with and handled, you know, or the way it even happened, all of that sort of stuff. I don't know. Like, I think that there's a lot of things that governments do which you can give them a pass on, right? You can say, oh well, that's, for example, let's just take one thing. There's so many things to talk about, but let's just say drinking water, for example, right? People question, you know, like how healthy the water that comes out of our taps is. Why is there fluoride in there and all this sort of stuff, and why is there all these extra chemicals in there? And when you think about it, right, actually just zoom out, like it's pretty amazing that drinking water can be pumped into so many people's homes all at once, and it's drinkable, and it doesn't kill you instantly. It might take a few years, but it doesn't, you know, it doesn't actually kill you instantly. It's clean, it looks good, it doesn't smell too bad. But of course, there's all this horrible shit in there that they have to put in there because, you know, there's chemicals in there to stop your pipes, not that your pipes, but their pipes from eroding, for example. You know, they need to put chemicals in there to keep that clean, to make sure that, yeah, the pipes don't rust as much as they probably would. I don't know why they put fluoride in there. They say that it's a mass medication thing. Again, that's one thing that's why I distill all my water personally. But like, just looking at it on that level, you can easily look at the government and say, yeah, that's pretty amazing that they do that. And then you've also got to question, yeah, why are they putting fluoride in there? There's so many things like that. It's sort of like there's this double-edged sword happening, you know, in our society. You know, I feel like I've got no issue paying taxes if it means that the roads are good and hospitals work correctly and doctors aren't incentivized to constantly pump, you know, tablets and pharmaceuticals into me. But unfortunately, again, like there's some good people and there's some bad people, and then there's a bunch of people in the middle that have no idea what they're doing. And it's sort of like, you know, it's just a really strange, complex situation that we find ourselves in. So I personally have resorted to the fact that I just look at everything individually, circumstantially, and just say, okay, this makes sense, this doesn't make sense. And, you know, some people agree with me on it, some people don't agree with me on it. You know, it's one of them weird, it's such a complex topic, really, you know.
Yeah. And like you said, I mean, like there's good people within these systems that are maybe doing the best they think they can. You know, from my view, I would say they've been propagandized to believe that government is the answer. And, you know, you mentioned fluoride. I'll just let you know, I mean, a little bit about some of the work that I've done. Like I was in the United States, in San Francisco in February of this year, reporting on this lawsuit that's taking place. It's a federal lawsuit against the U.S. government for water fluoridation. And I interviewed 3 different expert witnesses who are the leading experts in mercury poisoning, toxicity, who are concluding, and the data is showing that fluoride is lowering IQ in children. So, you know, when people find out about things like that, then they ask the questions like you were saying, okay, well, why do they put this in the water? Why would somebody want to put this in the water if it's causing these other harms? Mm-hmm. And that leads down the rabbit hole, of course, to all kinds of other questions. And then you mentioned taxes as well. I think that probably most people feel the same, that like, hey, if my roads are fixed and the neighborhood's clean, then if that's what my taxes are going towards, sure, I'll pay that. But if it's going towards bombs and surveillance and, mass murder and all these stuff, then I don't want any part in that. But yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate that those are the systems that we are dealing with. But I really do think that music like yours can get people to start having that questioning in their mind and thinking like, is this the best we can do? Is this, the penultimate of humanity?
Do you think so? Because I don't know. I feel like either you have it or you don't. I think some people just question and they want to know, and they're just, again, like, they don't trust the government because of, I don't know, the way that they're wired. I feel like I don't know whether we can wake people up. I feel like there's people on the fence, and maybe those people can get woken up a bit. But the older I get, the more I'm starting to realize it.
No, I understand.
You know what I mean?
I think that, so I'd say it's a little bit of both, right? Because, so for example, I mean, I've been doing this for 14 years and I've definitely had people come back to me and say, your video or this thing you did helped me start my journey, and maybe it is what you're saying. Maybe from birth, some of us just have that seed in us, and one day it's going to be watered and it's going to fruit, and they'll have their journey. And maybe some of us don't. I've asked that question a lot too, because, when I talk to other friends, for example, people that come to our events or that I've got to meet through activism, we all have different backgrounds, different lifestyles, ages, ethnicities, etc. Some of us drank fluoride water all day. Some of us watch TV all day, and still at some point something will happen. And usually it's like a traumatic event. For me, it was going to prison at 20 years old after getting addicted to drugs. That was like, I woke up spiritually first, started meditating, getting to prayer. And then when I got out, I woke up, further to politics and conspiracies or whatever. I've heard from people like, they got sick and then they started questioning, oh my God, how am I been eating? I need to rethink my health. It seems like sometimes there can be a big traumatic event that will sort of shake people from their slumber. But then at the same time, I do agree, there seems to be some people, for whatever reason, it's not like, hey, we're better than them or anything like that. But for some reason, maybe that's just not their path on the planet at this time, that they're just here to play another role. But that was actually leading me to another question. Like, do you find with your music, like, do you think your audience in general, and I don't want you to shit on your audience or anything like that, but do you think your audience in general understands the message, or is it a mix of people who are there to dance and enjoy the groove, or they're all kind of awake?
I do believe that they all get it. I think I've come to the realization, the reason I've never really gone commercial in any way, like there's almost like a ceiling to how large my audience can get because of the lyrical content. I think that it goes over a lot of people's heads, because it's not like the beats and the music itself is, like super original. I guess the way that I do it by beatboxing and looping, there's probably a lot of people that fell in love with what I do just from the aesthetic of that. But I think what I've realized over time is that, like, what's given me longevity, I think, is the lyrics. Because when I'm still doing what I do 18 years later, and people come to my shows and sing along to all the songs. Like, it's not like just one or two songs or one song that people come and sing along to. They know every song and they sing along to every one of them. And it's like they really get into the lyrics. So I think that my audience, and this another reason I would say it as well, is because my audience doesn't really seem to change. Whether I'm playing in Russia or the Ukraine or in Australia or in Bangkok or in America, or in Greece, it's the same type of people that come to my shows. They're always the same kind of, you know what I mean? Like, it's the same kind of audience, and they all have the same questions and the same thing to tell me. And they're all consciously active people. So yeah, I would never shit on those people anyway. They're awesome. How
does that feel? Like, I mean, to be able to do that at this point, I mean, that's got to be an amazing feeling.
It is, but it's something that I don't truly focus on too much, like I feel like from the get-go, I've always tried to keep my ego in check, if you know what I mean. Like, it's something that I've always been quite conscious of, maybe because when I was a little kid, I was a super egotistical little, narcissist. And there was times that kind of, when I was in high school, that basically challenged that. And I had to really start understanding have more awareness, essentially, of myself, my actions, and the way I come across to people. And so I had a strong awakening of that probably when I was like 16 years old. And so since then, I've always been quite aware of when my ego is bubbling and wanting to take over. So when people come and give me compliments and say your music changed my life, which happens a lot at all my shows always, some people tell me constantly, you know, like I was going to commit suicide and then I listened to your music and you know you it's like you talked me off the ledge type thing. And I hear that a lot, you know, like, so it would be quite easy to become super full of myself over there. So it kind of just goes in one ear and goes out the other. I try not to like let it just sort of churn about in my brain, because I don't want a big head, you know what I mean? So
no, I
again,
totally get that.
I just don't, you know, I don't really, when people tell me that stuff, I smile, say thank you so much, but I just try to let it sort of like flow on.
You just got to keep moving and stay focused on like you moving forward, right? The bigger picture.
Yeah, because, you know, like, exactly, there's so many people have changed my life as well, whether it's been through music or just conversations and stuff. And, you know, like, it's great to be one of those people, but I'm obviously not the be all and end all for all these people. And I just got to keep remembering that, because I think that's the problem that a lot of artists have. They think, oh my God, I am Jesus now, you know, and it's like, no, everybody has that potential to be inspiring. So, and we all are inspiring to everybody else all the time at different moments. So,
and it's a beautiful thing. I can definitely resonate with that. I mean, at a much smaller level, but with my work and hearing compliments, and like you said, it can be easy to fall into a trap, especially on the internet. If you get some followers on the internet, all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, look how important I am. And it's a trap people can fall into. And I even find, like, in the lyrics of your songs, you kind of, you know, you reference like ego and keeping yourself in check. And I'm so grateful for that, because I think that's an important reminder in the times that we're living in. You know, we mentioned COVID a couple of times. I wanted to ask you, like, how did COVID affect you directly in terms of your ability to tour? Like, were you able to tour at all? Obviously, much of Europe was locked down, and was in Australia, where you're originally from, was one of the worst places in terms of the lockdowns and just the treatment of people. How did that impact you as a musician and just as a person?
Yeah, the lockdown, I think, was a big thing that happened to all of us. And that's one of the main reasons why I was saying before, I'm quite pessimistic over whether we can wake people up or not. Because if there was ever a time that people could see through bullshit, that was the time. And a lot of people just dug their heels in. So that's why I'm pessimistic about that. But for me personally, I tell you what, like, it's funny. So at the beginning, like everybody, I was scared of it. I thought I was washing my cornflakes packets coming back from the supermarket, all that crap. You know, in the first couple of weeks, I think everybody was doing that. Not that I buy cornflakes. It was just an example. But, you know, I remember we took it quite seriously in the very beginning, and then very quickly realized there was something else going on, allegedly. But, yeah, I don't know. So Victoria, where I'm from, was like the most locked down like state in the world, I think. And it was pretty intense. There was drones hovering above our backyard every weekend. People would get dogged in, like the police would come around because the neighbors were like snitching on them and stuff like that, for having grandma over for her birthday and stuff like it was a pretty crazy time. And me and my wife, we just moved. So we had a house in the forest, which was amazing, but we wanted to move to the city. And so we sold our house just before COVID kicked in, just before it happened. And then just when we were meant to hand the keys over, it was lockdown. So we actually ended up staying in that house for like an extra 6 months because we weren't allowed to leave. Finally, there was like a bit of an opening for like a couple of months. And in that time, we bought and moved into a new house in the city. And it looked like it was never going to end. So, and as well, the Australian government said that we weren't allowed to leave. And I was calling my agent and speaking to my agent online, and he was saying, man, if you come over to Europe, we've got festivals, there's things opening. It's like different pockets opening at different times. So some countries were opening, and then others were shutting down, and then they'd switch. And he was like, look, you know, if you come to Europe, there's money on the table, essentially. And I was like worried, because I'm like, this is the only way that I can make my money. And, you know, I had 2 kids at this point. So my wife was just like, why don't we just move to Europe? Let's get out of here. Like, this is not where we want to be anyway. We've been talking about moving for a long time. So, yeah, we just literally within like a month, we just like, let's do it. So we packed up our whole house, put it on a boat to Portugal. We didn't know anybody in Portugal. We didn't know what was going to happen when we got there. We didn't really do much research because it was really difficult to know as well. It was like nobody knew anything at that time. And I've got an Italian passport, which means I can live in Europe and my family can be with me. And we knew that much. We put our house up for rent. and I sent my dog over like ahead of schedule because they have to do it. It takes a couple of weeks. We get to the airport, and we organized like these passes to say we could travel, because that was the other thing. They weren't letting anyone leave. You needed to get like consent from the government to leave the country, which was crazy. So we got that. They were like trying to scare us and making us think that we couldn't leave. And I was just like chatting to them, like, guys, look, my house is up for rent. It's already got people moving in soon. My dog's waiting for me on the other side. All our stuff's on a boat. I was like pleading with these idiots. And eventually they're like, all right, we'll let you go. So we let us through. But every stop when we got to Dubai, they were trying to tell us we couldn't be there. And then when we got to Portugal, they were like, what are you doing here? And we're like, well, we're moving here. And they're like, you can't move here from Australia. We're like, well, I've got an Italian passport, so am I not allowed? And they're like, no, you're not allowed to move from Australia. And this woman was basically trying to tell me that we had to leave and go back to Australia. And I was explaining to her the situation one more time, again, about, my dog's waiting for us, all that stuff's on a boat. And then the guy next to her just goes, yelling to her in Portuguese. And she went, oh, all right, off you go. And that was it. It was just like, really? So it was literally just you deciding this. It had nothing to do with, anyway, whatever. So we got into Portugal, and the day we arrived just happened to be the day that they came out of lockdown. We didn't know that. We just kind of, to be fair, I wing a lot of what I do in my life, and it always seems to work out. I'm very lucky like that. So, there was nobody in Portugal because everyone had left. All the expats had left. So there was just thousands of apartments going real cheap. So we found an amazing apartment. All of a sudden I just started working. I never had to get vaccinated. I thought I might have to, but I just said to myself, I'm going to see how long I can last without getting vaccinated. And the moment that I have to provide for my family, I guess I'll do it then. But I never really had to. I just kept, having to get tested, and I did, and I just kept working, and eventually it all went away, and so it was fine. So me and my family, we managed to get away with not getting vaccinated. Whereas in Australia, straight after we left, they started mandating the vaccines, and everyone I knew who didn't want to take it had to take it.
It's so crazy. Such a crazy time, man. Yeah, I'm glad you were able to avoid that, because as I'm sure you know by now, a lot of people who got those shots didn't necessarily fare well, and some people were injured, unfortunately. Right. And even, I was one of the many journalists who was censored in 2020. I had the YouTube channel, my bigger YouTube channel, 70,000 subscribers, 5 million views, deleted in October 2020 for asking these kind of questions and for, talking about these sort of things. Did you ever... Yeah, exactly. Part of the purge. Did you ever face any, like you mentioned, for traveling, you were having to get tested, but did you ever have any like promoters or clubs or anything like push back against you and not want to book you for speaking out? Like, I'm sure you noticed a lot of musicians around the world, especially in the mainstream. I mean, like as somebody who grew up listening to punk and metal, I was sorely disappointed by all of those musicians who just kind of embraced get not only just like, hey, I want to get the shot, that's my personal choice, but talking shit about people who choose not to and requiring it for their shows and things like that. Did you ever face any pressure in that sense?
No, but that was disgusting, especially all these so-called activist musicians that I knew, and like in the reggae scene, especially like these Rastafari guys, white Rastafari guys who were like, telling everyone they need to get vaccinated. I'm like, dude, aren't you a Rasta? Like, aren't you against all this stuff in the first place? Like, it didn't make any sense to me. Like, and all these evangelical people just go trust the science and all that stuff. I'm like, what science? I mean, where is the science? Like, there's this. Anyway, whatever. Like, we don't have to revisit too much of that. But yeah, it was crazy. No promoters actually. I worded up because I don't actually have to interface with them anyway, personally. I've got an agent and a manager who kind of do all my bookings and make sure everything's. And I just told them, look, tell them whatever you need to tell them, but I'm not going to get vaccinated. I'm willing to do the shows. And a lot of the festivals in Europe that required vaccinated people, like you couldn't go to the festival if you weren't vaccinated, but the artist didn't need to be vaccinated. That was actually one of the things. And I remember hearing it going, God damn, that's crazy. It's good for me, terrible for all the punters. But so I guess I was just super lucky, I was very
wow. Glad to hear that, brother. Well, let's take it back to the music for a minute before we wrap up. What's your favorite song off the new album? Like which one do you think everybody who maybe hasn't heard your music yet should check out?
I mean, I don't know. Like none of this, again, it's a bad question to ask me, because like all my songs mean something to me. There's a reason
Sure.
for all of them. It's like saying choose between your children or something. Like I think it's just an album. The way I write my music and I put my albums together is I curate it all so that there's a flow. So I feel like Infinite Reflection. That's, you chuck the album on and just let it play start to finish, and it's sort of like that's a song for me. You know what I mean? Same goes with my set. The way I curate my set, I don't necessarily sing like a whole song and then a whole song and then a whole song. I combine songs together so you get this sort of flow of music, this thread. And sometimes I'll take the chorus from one song and the verse from another song and then the B section from another song, and I slam them together, and sort of like a medley, but not really, because it's over a completely new beat from another song, for example. And so it's sort of like what you're hearing is the sound of Dub FX, but there's no specific. It's like it's always evolving. Because like one thing that I've realized when it comes to music, this is a realization I had a while back, is that before we could record music, there was no such thing as like a finished song. As an artist might sing a song, and then over the course of their career, because they're not recording, that song would evolve and change, and so 20 years later it's a completely different sounding song, or it means something else to them, so they sing it differently. And so that's how I feel with my songs. When I listen to songs that I recorded 10 years ago, I'm like, whoa, it doesn't even sound like the song to me, because I'm singing it like this now. I don't think about the old version, you know what I mean? So it's hard to ask me where to start, because I would say start with my live show. That's kind of, you want to get the most out of my music, then see it live, because that's really the most important thing. That's where I put most of my effort.
I would say put the whole album on, like you said, and just listen all the way through.
Yeah, exactly, man. Because like another thing that I sort of tend to say a lot, like I sort of touched on it before with the self-empowerment thing, like I really feel like the reason I got to that point of thinking about that being the main message in all my music, and it does kind of constantly come in and out of all my songs, is because we're not empowered. This is the thing. You asked me about the government before, and they do everything in their power to make us not feel empowered, because they want us to feel like we need them, right? The same goes with the medical institutions. Of course, we need people who have studied medicine and all that sort of stuff. But really, when you look at like old ancient civilizations like Chinese medicine, all that sort of stuff, everything was about preventative, right? It wasn't necessary. I mean, obviously, the medical, the way, not just the medical world today, but like even just the way our governments work in the education system, it's based on, solution-based problems of like what's happening now, like the symptoms, like how do we solve symptoms, whether it's homelessness. Let's just solve it's not based on symptoms. I meant the other way. What's the other word? What's the opposite?
They don't address the root causes. They're just hitting the symptom.
Oh, no, I am saying the right thing. Yeah, they want to address the symptoms, but not the root cause. Sorry, my brain is like, I've had a long ass day. I've been up since
all good, man.
This morning.
No, you're totally correct about that. I mean, that's why, again, many of us who are people who follow my work and who are going to be at the People's Reset are looking for solutions and looking, for inspiration with people like yourself and the music, because we recognize, like, I think we can do better. I think we're capable of something better than what we're being shown, even if it's on a small scale in our own communities or neighborhoods or churches or whatever, that we are capable of handling our own health, taking care of our lives. It's just that so many people have been given that disempowering message that you're talking about.
Exactly. And that's the thing. I feel like if the more people when we talk about people waking up, I feel like it's actually being empowered. That's the main thing. Because once you're empowered, self-empowered, you don't need to have a guru to tell you how to be more, spiritual. You just go within and you can find it. You know what I mean? Obviously, certain things like health, it's better to have someone who studied that sort of stuff, sure. But like, if you're finding people who are looking at, finding cures based on preventative medicine, things like that, when you never have to get sick down the line, then that's kind of the way forward, in my opinion. So I feel like governments and the medical industry and the education system, it's sort of like, it's based on this symptom-based, sort of, I don't know, situation where rather than looking at the root causes of things, like education to me seems like the most important most important job out there. You can't learn to do anything without education. You can't have doctors, you can't have astronauts, you can't have anything without people teaching you how to do something, right? Whatever it is. And yet they get paid the least in our society. It's like the shittest job in our society. It's like, I feel like if we wanted to change the world, if we wanted to make the world a better place, start with that, pay. I feel like education, not only should it be free, but to be a teacher at a school, you should be getting paid like let's say, imagine they're getting 500 grand a year, right? That sounds like an insane amount of money, but imagine the minds that it would attract, in education, the kinds of people it would be like the most sought after job, the most esteemed job. It's the complete opposite of that currently.
Yeah.
And after imagine that. So you have like the best minds, instead of going into marketing or becoming lawyers or whatever it is, like they go in, well, not that we don't need lawyers and stuff like that, but we don't need all kinds of lawyers, but like imagine if those kinds of people went into education and within 30 years, the kids that come from that and then go back into it, like after 30 years, they would solve all of our problems. You know what I mean? It's like, I feel like the reason we can't solve the problems is because we're all stupid. And, I feel like I'm one of those stupid people myself. Everything I do is based on intuition. I don't read probably as much as you do. I spend most of my time just with my kids and working on music, touring, and thinking a lot. I'm not the most.
But you intuitively know, you can intuitively feel when things are wrong and when they're right. And I think that's a voice that a lot of people have been taught to ignore. You talk about the importance of teachers, like you said, the teachers are so important. And if we could even go take it further and get the propaganda out of the school systems and have people who actually do care about teaching children, then I think we'd be in a much better place. Because I'm not a parent yet myself, but as you know, I mean, the kids and what we do for them. And, in our indigenous communities, we're taught to think of the 7 generations and beyond. And so, if we're really going to think about the future generations and those who are coming after us, what we put in their minds as well as in their bodies and in their hearts is going to shape what that future looks like. So, I think it's absolutely important, brother. Well, man, I appreciate you. Go ahead. I was just saying, I appreciate all your efforts, man, and like the taking the time to communicate this with me. And I think that you said something earlier that people really need to come experience your music in person. And that's what I'm hoping people will do, those who are hearing this conversation. And if you're already not attending the People's Reset in Bath, it's September 27th to the 29th. WFX is performing Saturday night, the People's Reset concert, the 28th, and going to be a number of great artists, and you'll get to hear them in person, and hopefully we'll get you to do some workshops as well. And I would love if you can spend the weekend, because I think you will find some value and meet some other like-minded people who are, each of us in our own ways, trying to figure out how do we leave something better for the coming generations, whether that's through music, whether that's through journalism or activism or just being a parent or whatever it may be. I mean, that's what this whole movement, if you will, that we're trying to focus on is how can we redirect the energy, not so much about pointing our fingers about like, hey, look at these horrible people and these horrible things. Sure, let's be aware of what they're doing, but let's look at ourselves and say, how can we create something better? How can we empower and uplift ourselves and focus on what our future is going to look like? So I really appreciate everything you do, man. Is there anything else you'd like to share in terms of the album, the music, and where everybody can find your work?
Oh man, not really. It's not about me, really, is it? It's all about us. It's about, again, the empowerment. It's awesome that you're trying to spread that too, because I feel like there's not a lot of people that take that perspective, because once we're all empowered, we all know how to make the right decisions for ourselves and for the people around us. Yeah, man, you're on it. Check out my music if you want. But yeah, I'm really curious to come to your thing, and I'm going to be there for the whole weekend. I'm really looking forward to it. So I appreciate you interviewing me here and having me play. And I guess I'm not the greatest speaker, but my music speaks for itself. So yeah, just come and watch the show and
awesome. Yeah, thank you so much, brother. I'm gonna include some of his music below for those who haven't checked it out. I'm gonna put some of my favorite songs. Encourage you to look into those. And even if you can't make it in Bath, catch him on the road somewhere, because he's on the road a lot. And I'm hoping at some point we can bring you down to Mexico. So when we do our Mexico event, you can come out here and experience what we're building as well. And I just look forward to collaborating, connecting more in person. So thanks for joining me, everybody. Check out the links below. As always, remember, you are powerful. You are beautiful, and you are free. Peace.
Peace out.
that you were starting to see the world ain't what it used to be. We wanna live in harmony, but there's cracks in the mirror, people getting thicker. So I'm calling out to you. You might think there is nothing left to do, so I'ma tell you tonight, I ain't ever going down without a fight.
So here I go again, I'm never trusting in the media and the motherfucking government. It's got me stumbling, it's got me wondering, oh Mr. Prime Minister and Mr. President, would you get your facts straight? When we give the mandate, all I hear is your ego. Don't you know that we know the fact of the matter is the system is broken? We are still hoping that your mind can open. Now we gather in the street, marching to the beat, chanting down Babylon and the elite, the Fortune 500. You are outnumbered, now you're getting hunted cause people need to eat, and you're obsolete, so we turn up the heat. You feel the global warming, this is your warning. We're not supporting, we're not conforming to your conspiracy. I know that you were starting to see the world ain't what it used to be. We wanna live in harmony, but there's cracks in the mirror, people getting thicker. So I'ma call it out to you. You might think there is nothing left to do, so I'ma tell you tonight, I ain't ever going down without a fight. They tell us we could never work together. They tell us that they make our lives better. They're jealous when they're not in the center, and powerless if we all apply the pressure. So I'ma keep on pushing for the better, love and positivity forever. So come and join in this endeavor. So as we consciously rebuild society with a whole new level of prosperity, variety, no anxiety, cause we decentralizing the power. And every second, every minute, every hour, every day, we look up to the sky and we pray. With no delay, we communicate the love and let it shine from above.
Starting to see the world ain't what it used to be. We wanna live in harmony, but there's cracks in the mirror, people getting thicker. So I'ma calling out to you. You might think there is nothing left to do, so I'ma tell you tonight, I